I mean, yes, I'm moving the soil around. I'm sure someone's gonna say, oh my God, you're tilling your soil. Yeah, but you know, this sort of activity is not gonna happen in this bed now for years, right? I don't do this in every bed, every season. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I thought I'd do a video on trench composting. I had people asking me recently, you know, do you leave plants in the ground? Do you pull them out? You know, what do you do with your, you know, when the end of the growing season, you got plants stuck in the ground, do you pull them out? Do you leave them into rot? What do you do? And, you know, I gave a fairly nuanced answer saying it really depends on what it is, you know, but for me, if it's a biennial plant, like a Swiss chard, I don't leave it in. And, you know, I got a lot of different comments on that video, but, you know, I don't want the Swiss chard to come back and grow and go to seed and that sort of thing. I just don't do it that way. I don't think it's a good use of my time or the space or whatever. And other people do different things, and that's fine. I think I got a pretty good garden every year. So anyway, so a lot of people that watch my channel, you realize I don't have a compost bin. So, you know, you've got, so here's a Swiss chard. And I pulled this out a couple weeks ago, and there's, you know, the roots and everything like that. What do you do with a plant like this, right? I mean, if I left it all in the garden, assuming it survives the winter, it probably will, it'll start to grow next spring, and it'll go to flower eventually and give me Swiss chard seeds. I won't be much use from this one here because it's a hybrid, so who knows what kind of Swiss chard I'll get from those. Could get something amazing, could get the most useless Swiss chard ever. Really the only option is I can chuck them in the woods or I can just compost them, which is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to use it. I don't have a compost pile here because kitchen scraps and things like that, they just draw the wild animals in the surrounding area. I've got black bears, raccoons, skunks, everything here, everything. So all the, you know, sort of kitchen waste composting setup does is draw them in and create problems, and actually create safety problems for my kids. I don't want, you know, black bears rummaging through my compost in the backyard. That's not good. So yeah, I'm just throwing this all here, and I'm just gonna basically just hang out with you and get this garden ready for next year and just sort of talk through it, and maybe a bit of rambling, maybe, as is my way, about who knows what. Yeah, just show you the process. It's not going to take long. I think I should be able to get this whole bed done. I got to get it done fast because my hands are getting wet, and it's around 0 degrees Celsius, and my hands aren't going to last long in this situation. I think I might grab the pitchfork here. But yeah, this is the first step, is just pulling everything out. Any weed, not a lot of weeds here, but any weeds I see, there's a rock I don't really need. Anything that's plant, yes, I'm stepping in the bed. It's okay to do once in a while. Just try to keep the stepping in your beds to a minimum. But if you're choosing between putting your back out and stepping in a bed, especially if you're working it like this. I mean, once the things are growing in it, you probably want to avoid that at all costs. But at this stage, doesn't matter. This bed's in a perfect situation for trench composting because I'm going to be planting squash in it next year. So just trying to find all those different roots. So it doesn't matter if there's, I mean, it'll take, you know, hardly any composting is going to happen this winter. It's just too darn cold, right? The soil's cold, maybe a tiny bit, but these, you know, next spring, April or May, I'm going to dig a trench down the middle of this. But if I dug that up, there'd be, you know, Swiss chard in it. Right? I would hazard to guess that this stuff won't be broken down until maybe next August, maybe. who knows, right? But I have found where I live really nothing in a trench composting setting. If you had a way of insulating a compost pile and, keeping all that activity going, you could probably get something to compost. But this is cold composting. Trench composting is cold composting. Yeah, you're not going to get a lot going on during the winter. You got to, set your expectations low. But if I can give you one pearl of wisdom, setting your expectations low is probably a good approach to life in general. I don't mean be a pessimist, just, geez, if you're always expecting the absolute best out of life and out of people, you're going to be probably disappointed a lot. Okay, so now I got all those roots out, or most of them, and any weeds I see. So now all I'm doing, yes, I'm moving the soil around. I'm sure someone's going to say, oh my God, you're tilling your soil. Yeah, but this sort of activity is not going to happen in this bed now for years, right? I don't do this in every bed, every season, right? I just do it when I feel like it, when it makes sense. Today, it's December 27th. I've been eating and drinking and, living off the fat of the land for days, right? Really enjoying the holiday season. So I could really use some exercise, right? And I find gardening a great exercise. Man, there's a huge rock in the middle of this thing. How mobile is that rock? That is enormous. That's not coming out. That rock is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. That's going to get in the way of my trench composting idea. But anyway, we'll work around it here. Not the end of the world. Just make it a bit deeper on either side of the rock. That rock is probably, I don't know, 3 by 3 by 3, maybe. It's huge. I find gardening to be just a great form of exercise. I found myself kind of getting out of shape this year. I don't know, about a month ago. Just having a sore back all the time and feeling fragile, feeling like I couldn't really push it at all. It was really getting on my nerves. There's a potato. I did not grow potatoes in this garden this year. That must have been a hidden volunteer, I guess. This was a Swiss chard bed. Where the heck did that potato come from? Now you're looking at the soil and it's so black. Good, beautiful soil. All I did when I made this bed, I had a video on how I made this bed. I think something like low-cost garden, or how to make a garden for nothing, how to make a garden that costs nothing, some sort of, I'll put a link to it at the end. But all I did was put a log here, a short log there, and a short log there. And I filled it with horse manure. That potato's rotten. Probably got frozen. That's all I did. Just filled it with horse manure. And then that summer, I grew tomatoes, right? You got horse manure in the ground, so you grow something that goes up from there. And then, following year, I grew something else. Potatoes, I think. And then, and having potatoes follow tomatoes is probably not the smartest move because they're in the same family, but it was okay. It worked out fine. I think crop rotation's a good idea, but you don't have to be, a fanatic about it. It's just a good idea. And then just this last year, I planted something very different. I planted Swiss chard. It grew just fine. So other than putting, some logs down and about 6 inches of horse manure, I haven't done anything here. And the existing soil was just, the stuff on the hill next to my garden, which hardly has anything growing on, just rocks and clay and stuff like that. So we started with pretty poor soil, and horse manure is not known for being a potent fertilizer, but I mean your plants only need what they need, right? The results speak for themselves. All right, so I got all that done. Now we throw all this stuff in the hole. This stuff won't grow. Shouldn't be able to grow up through all that. We'll stuff it down. You want to, hope I'm not shaking the microphone up too much. When you, this stuff like this, you want to push it down. You want to compress it. Okay? There's a lot of air in there, and you don't want to have a valley in your garden, right? It's nice to have a garden in a valley, but you don't want to have a valley in your garden. So yeah, you want to stomp it a bit, compress it down, right? Just wreck the plant, right? And then you're going to put soil on top of it, and I've never found anything other than things like potatoes or tuber type plants. But stuff like this, they shouldn't be able to come back from being treated like that. All right, need a rake. So yeah, some people are going to be watching this and getting bent into shape because, I'm, for all intents and purposes, tilling up this bed. But, disturbing your soil every once in a while isn't the end of the world. If you're doing it season after season after season after season, right? The life in the soil is going to have a hard time recovering from that, right? And over time, it's not going to work out well. But I mean, you grow potatoes, you're going to disturb your soil picking the potatoes, right? You grow carrots, you're going to dig the carrots out. There's, that's another reason to rotate your crops, right? I'm going to grow squash in here next year. The soil's going to be completely left alone for that year and the following one. I mean, all you do when you're done growing squash is just rip the plants out, lay them down on top of the soil, add a bit of mulch to that, and the bed's ready for the following year. Right? So squash is a great plant to grow for the lazy gardener. I just love growing squash. I love eating it. I'm still eating my squash from last season. We had it on Christmas dinner. We had squash. It was delicious. All right, so that's a general idea there. We got that done. Now I got a little bit of, I'm kind of running out of different kinds of mulches, but I got a little bit of this straw that a buddy of mine sort of bartered for it. So not a lot, but this is something. Right, always keep your soil covered. So I might only have enough to put an inch on this, but even that is going to feed the soil organisms. If in the coming weeks I'm able to get down to the ocean to get some seaweed, or I notice someone's thrown out a bag of leaves at the end of the driveway on the way to and from work, snatch that up and add it to this. This is a pretty subpar. I wouldn't. This really isn't enough mulch. This should be double this thickness, for my preference. Right? It's better than nothing. That's why I'm putting it on. Right? Even this will feed the soil organisms and do something. Right? Now this is straw, which I don't like. I prefer hay because it clumps together and doesn't tend to blow around. But regardless of whether I'm using straw or hay, I tend to like to put spruce boughs on top to keep it from blowing away. My property is surrounded by trees, and take a couple branches off a tree here or there is no real big deal. My property, take some of the lower branches away, allows me to see through the forest a little bit. There's still plenty of, canopy, still plenty going on there. Right, this is just a branch or two off a tree. Tree's still doing fine, right? So the tree's helping me, and I'm kind of pruning the tree to grow in a way that I want in the forest behind my house. Often when I make these videos, people will say, "You're out of breath, are you okay?" And when you're filming videos and doing all the talking, you don't always control your breathing properly. Also possible I'm a little bit out of shape. But yeah, the only reason I'm breathing heavily is because I'm talking, doing something physical, 48, maybe a little out of shape. Okay, that's it. That's all that's required. Oh, one more thing. Yeah, it's handy to, I got anything lying around here that'll work. One more thing that's good to do is if you got anything with some weight, like a log, throw that on top. Right? See one over here too. Grab this guy. Yeah. Hey, you throw that on top. And knit the branches underneath that. Right, so they don't go anywhere. Right, so you bit of a method to things, right? There we go. Yeah, I almost forgot that. So, I've got this straw. He gave me 2 bales there. I think 2 bales of it. And I've got it on about 4 different beds in the garden. We had so much wind on Christmas Day that they warned there might be power outings, that sort of thing. We didn't have power outing, but just to say that it was a very windy day just a couple days ago. None of the straw beds that I prepared in this way lost their straw. Sure, the odd strand might take off, but the majority of the straw is still in place. So that's how you deal with, I'm kind of all over the place here, but I'm just saying, while I'm working on this bed, doing the sort of thing I typically do in a day like this, also just anticipating the kinds of questions people will throw at me. Many of them answered in previous videos, but I got like 450 videos, so that's a lot of videos for someone to have to watch that's new to the channel. Although I think it's a great idea if you're bored on any given day. Yeah, this method works really well for holding down mulches that blow around, right? You put some sort of branch over it, and then you interlace those branches in a sort of herringbone pattern. Loose doesn't have to be perfect, right? But sort of interlace the branches so they're all kind of on top of one another in a pattern, and you put something heavy on top of them so that they're all just adding some weight to that equation. And it has the effect of a whole bunch of tiny hands holding everything down, right? It also helps give the straw some contact with the soil. So, if there is any worm activity, and I dug up a lot of worms today when I was working on this, so they're around. They're definitely working today despite the, the cold temperature. It's not that cold really. For this time of year it's... Hey folks, wouldn't you know it, my wireless microphone battery died right in the last minute of this video as I was wrapping up, so I'll try to go from memory here. Yeah, trench composting. I don't do it in every bed in my garden. I only do it maybe in a couple beds a year, right? It's more work than just leaving everything to rot in place, which is what I do most of the time. There's just certain circumstances where it makes sense to do a trench compost. If you've got a, composting station of some kind, probably doesn't make a lot of sense for you, but if you don't, Or if you just got a garden that's not performing very well and you got an extra 15 minutes on you and you want to get a little exercise, dig a trench, throw some stuff in there, and give the soil organisms a feast. And they'll do their thing. And your garden will just get better and better with time. So I hope you found that interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Don't forget to click the bell. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.